Empire. Grading your valuable card collection. There's an app for that.
It's fascinating to see. I see people at card shows now. We just had a big card show this last weekend out in Las Vegas. And I see people going up to the grading companies, PSA and SGC, and they'll sit there with the app and actually like do this research right as they're putting together the submission.
That's Ted Mann, CEO of Collx, who built an app to give you a range of what your cards are worth. This is the Future Sport Podcast. I'm Bram Weinstein. You'll like this story. Ted Mann is in tech, and he has a son, and they share a hobby of collecting, and they both want to know whether what they own is actually worth something. And Ted says, you know what? I can fix that. Our guest this week is Ted Mann. He's the CEO of Collx, Collx, which gives you the opportunity to snap a photo of your cards and get the value of those in seconds. Hey, Ted, how are you?
I'm doing great, Bram. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, there was an explosion in the collectibles market in and around the pandemic. Kind of take me through the background of Collx and why you wanted to build this.
The whole idea for the app actually came from my son, Charlie, who was 10 years old at the time, getting really into cards like so many people during the pandemic. And I found that Charlie was having so many of the same challenges that I had when I was a kid with cards, starting with the problem of figuring out what they're worth. He was running into this challenge initially with his Pokemon cards, and then he started getting really into sports cards, including, going and looting my old sports card collection. And he was, doing what I did when I was his age, trying to do deals with my friends at school and buying and selling. But he made more than a few kind of bad trades or bad deals and came to me saying, Dad, I screwed up. I didn't realize this card was worth so much. Can you help me get it back? And I told him same thing my dad told me when I was a kid, which is I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go unwind a bad deal, but I'll help teach you how to not make that kind of mistake. And so I set about trying to teach Charlie how to look up the value of cards, and was kind of surprised that there were no really good tools for it. At least I couldn't find tools that made it really quick and easy to look up the cards that we had. And so kind of beat my head against the wall for several months trying to use, using the old Beckett guide, using eBay, even using some of the apps on the market like Card Ladder, Sports Card Investor, which, by the way, all work to some degree, but nothing was really solving the problem very well for us. And so ultimately got so frustrated that I built something for my son, and then that kind of snowballed from there.
Ted, what's your background? Were you into collectibles?
So I mean, yes, as when I was Charlie's age, I was really into cards. But my recent professional background is actually in the technology space. So I don't come to this with a deep well of knowledge and experience with cards, but more so on how to use technology to solve problems like this. So my last 3 companies have all been in the field of computer vision and visual search, basically using your camera to help you find things and identify them. My first company was a coupon app where you could basically turn a picture of a coupon into a mobile coupon. And then after that, I did a company around visual product search, identifying products from photos, and part search, so identifying spare parts, and now identifying trading cards from a picture. That was kind of the whole impetus for Collx. Charlie came to me and said, "Hey, Dad, what if you could just take a photograph of my trading card? Couldn't use that same technology you've been working on for all these years to be able to look it up faster?"
Okay. We're living parallel lives. I have a 10-year-old son. My son wants me to grade a lot of my old cards because some of them are potentially worth a lot of money and some of them aren't. Same thing with Pokemon. He wants to know what his cards are worth. So we're a customer of yours. But let me ask the big questions, okay? Taking the picture of the card, can the app tell if that card is fake?
Not really. I mean, certainly, if the card was, quite an obvious fake, right? We would probably detect that. But if it's a good fake, that's a pretty tough thing for this kind of technology to do. It is possible to do it in other ways, but what I've actually seen happen on the app, it's really interesting. So we now have a big community of people that use Collx, about 700,000 users, 720,000. Look at it right now, and that community is actually, it's really neat. Like they to some degree they kind of police each other, and like when people use bad language or act inappropriately, they'll call you out. But they also try to help. In some cases, whether maybe you want to hear this or maybe you don't, but like they'll tell you, I think this card is a fake. And so I've seen a lot of that actually happening on the app. Just the community will step up and say, hey, that that Mickey Mantle card probably isn't legit. I noticed these telltale signs looking at the picture that give it away. And those are things that while the app doesn't have, the computer vision isn't designed to kind of detect, or it would be quite complicated to build a system to do that for so many cards. I think it's got community does it. And I think you see that also on Facebook and other platforms. People go to groups and they'll get that kind of feedback there. And I think, luckily we've been able to kind of create that kind of community within Collx as well.
Okay. Second big question. Obviously, grading is a big part of determining the true value of these cards. How do you think about grading of these cards?
Sure. So when I was a kid, grading wasn't even a thing. I don't know, Bram, was it?
No.
I don't know. Don't mean to presume how old you are, but it sounds like if you have kids, maybe neither for you.
No, I went to card shows as a kid. I'm 50. I collected cards. And it was excellent, very good, good, bad. That was grading, and the naked eye told me what I needed to know about them.
For sure, yeah. So the whole grading world has been new to me, getting back in the cards. So but it's been a fun crash course. And so like you and your son, I've been grading a lot of cards with my boy, and I was very let's just say drawn to the idea of building computer vision for card grading when I first started working on this, and thought, wow, that'd be a really fun problem to solve. That'd be really cool. This technology could definitely do it. And the long and short of it is, I do believe that computer vision based card grading is feasible, and I'm sure somebody will ultimately crack it. But as I got more into the problem, I realized it's a very hard problem to solve at scale. And I don't think right now anybody has truly cracked the mobile computer vision card grading thing. And so where that leaves us is I still think that sending your cards to a professional grading company to actually be looked by a human being and evaluated that way is still really the only way to get a good, reliable grade. I think there are a ton of great grading companies out there. Obviously PSA is the kind of gold standard, but you also have Beckett and SGC that do a phenomenal job, and I've graded with all of them and a few others. What I think we learned at Collx is that our app has almost by accident become a tool that collectors are using to figure out whether it makes sense to grade their card.
Okay.
And by that I mean people will scan a card, they'll see what it's worth raw, and then they'll say, oh, it would be worth 10 times as much if it graded as a PSA 7 or an 8, and then they're like, okay, that's worth the bet. Or maybe they turn around and they say it's only going to be worth $5 if it's graded. It's not even worth the cost of grading it, right? So that sort of depends on the card and all that. We aren't unfortunately solving the other half of that equation, which is, what would it grade at? How good is it?
Right.
What kind of number would you get? But if we can at least help on the figuring out like the monetary side of the question, it gets you a good part of the way there to deciding whether or not it's worth it to submit.
This episode is brought to you by Dave. When you need money in a pinch, Dave can help. It's a banking app that can help you get up to $500 instantly. No interest, late fees, or credit check. Join the millions already using Dave to get financial relief and sign up for an extra cash account to get up to $500 instantly. Go to dave.com/Spotify or download the Dave app now. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees apply. Banking services provided by Evolve Bank and Trust, member FDIC.
This episode is brought to you by Chalk and Dog, which brings together the vast experience and expertise of two of the brightest agencies in media, sports, wagering, and gaming. With deep roots in the UK and the US, the agency offers expert guidance in everything from market entry to market expansion for startups as well as established global brands, powered by best-in-class communication and creative experts. Chalk and Dog has vast international experience and delivers results-oriented, tailor-made solutions for B2B and B2C organizations. Then let me ask this, because it's funny, I'm looking at the site now. There's a picture. One of the examples you're showing is kind of an early career Joe Montana card. I actually have that card. I've actually had that card graded. And as you know, if it's a 10, it's going to be worth a lot of money. And if it's a 7, the range is massive. So as you kind of like think that through, and if I took a picture of this card on your app and it would tell me what it's worth, I think you and I both know.
I hope you don't mind. Look on the app right now so I can give you up-to-date data.
Yeah. I mean, like, but as you and I both know, telling me the value of that card is hard just by a picture because it varies greatly what the card could actually be worth dependent on graded condition. So how do you kind of think through, like, are you going to tell me there's a range of what this is worth?
Yeah, we say, I'm looking at it right now. I wish I could show you this, but if you scan the Joe Montana rookie card, right, you'll see that it's worth, $165 raw, very good. It would be worth $300 or so dollars if it was in mint condition. And if it was, a PSA 9, it would be, $1,400.
Right.
PSA 8, or less, so it's like $400. PSA 7, you're down even closer to $300. And then a PSA 6 is like, it's not even worth as much as as much as raw. Very good. So, you can sort of like go through and, and kind of, look at all those prices. And it's fascinating to see. I see people at card shows now. We just had a big card show this last weekend out in Las Vegas. And I see people going up to the grading companies, PSA and SGC, and they'll sit there with the app and actually like do this research right as they're putting together the submission and making the decision to go, no go on what to submit.
I mean, it's so interesting because when I was a kid, I walked around with a pricing guide. And, I'd see whatever case, and I'd quickly try to look it up and see what the value was of it. So I see the utility here. Tell me a little bit about, like, how does it come to the value? Could you tell me about the technology behind that?
Sure. It's mostly just based on comparables from that we've pulled from different marketplaces. eBay is the largest by a good mile, but then we also have sites like TCG Player and TCDB and a whole bunch of sports slots, a bunch of other marketplace sites where we are able to pull in the sale prices for the cards. So that's the way we currently do it. We're starting to facilitate buying and selling through the Collx app. So as we do more of those types of deals where we actually facilitate the transaction, we'll also start to use those comps in our pricing tables as well.
Okay. I wanted to talk about that with you because you're just talking about how this is going to become a marketplace for this. How are you thinking through that? Is this an eBay model? How do you kind of think about the buying and selling and transacting of the cards themselves?
Yeah, it is an eBay style model. I think that the biggest difference between us and eBay is the fact that, Collx is also a collection tool. So you can build your whole collection on the app. And therefore, buyers and sellers have pretty good visibility into what the other party has. So when you're negotiating a kind of a peer-to-peer transaction, there's a really cool opportunity to be able to put together a bundle of multiple cards and to really, basically to see where your interests and the other collector's collection, where those intersect. I don't know if you ever had this experience with eBay. Sometimes like I'll be buying a $5 card on eBay, and I'm kind of like I'm almost spending as much on shipping as the card is worth.
Yeah.
And I feel stupid about that. So I end up going and looking through that person's store if they have one to try to find other cards to be able to kind of bundle together. But unless that seller has actually turned on some of the shipping, the special shipping features to allow you to kind of combine shipping, you end up with a scenario where you're paying multiple shipping fees for each thing. So it's just eBay is not really well designed to facilitate those multi-card transactions. And I think Collx, just by virtue of being this kind of more social marketplace where you have the collections tied in, I think we're going to be able to do a better job of that.
Okay.
And I think it's also a little bit more of a streamlined experience, whereas eBay was actually just doing it with my son this morning. He wanted to sell some his Pokemon cards, and because we don't have the marketplace fully stood up on Collx, he wanted to do it on eBay. I'm like, all right, I'll do it on eBay for now. And just doing that experience all over again, I was, reminded like, wow, this is really tedious. It takes took us like a half hour for each card. It's just, maybe I'm a little rusty, but I'm like, it's just super time consuming. Listing on Collx will take you like less than a minute to get the card scanned and priced and sold.
Okay, so let me go back to the community you have. You had a son, you saw a problem, you saw your background fit the solution for the problem, you make a solution for the problem. Are you surprised how big the community is that's interacting with this?
So I hope it doesn't sound too cocky or confident to say no, I'm not. I did a little market research before starting, or before sort of like diving into doing this as a business, right? I'd been working on it as a side project with my son, thought it had some potential. Was really interested in how quickly the little prototype I built for Charlie went viral. But I had the question of how big could this get, right? And I knew a little bit about the secondary market for cards, just having looked at eBay and seen how big that their marketplace is, and some of the other marketplaces had, basically had kind of calculated the total addressable market for the secondary sales for cards at around $5 billion, which is, don't get me wrong, it's very big, but that's that's where it is now. And my big question was, okay, is there room to potentially grow that? And could it get any bigger? And so we did another bit of research, a study, to try to assess how many people own trading cards. And that's where the numbers are really kind of incredible. It's the study that we did found that 33% of all American adults, about 85 million people, own trading cards. Huge percent of the population. It was all like, the junk wax era that we grew up in. Whether those people are active or not, it effectively seeded millions and millions and millions of potential collectors out there. And so many of those people, like, guys like you and me, have a shoebox of cards somewhere that there's some sentimental value to, and that almost certainly, if you're still holding on to it, you sort of wonder, what are these worth?
Yeah.
And the theory of Collx is, if you can give those folks a way to figure out what the cards are worth, that might be a gateway to getting them back into the hobby.
In the future, do you see partnerships with grading services, with other large collectible service companies? How do you kind of see this thing growing in that way?
Yeah, great question. Definitely with the grading companies. I wouldn't say that was my initial plan with starting Collx, but like I said, we see people now using the app to figure out what to submit. And so we have actually been approached by every major grading company to work with them. So I think that's a huge opportunity. And I think it's also just makes sense, right? It's a good value add to the Collx user to be able to have a one-click submission, make that a little more streamlined as well. I also think there's a huge opportunity for us to help with supplies. You get into collecting, you start to very quickly graduate, from just buying the cards to buying the penny sleeves and the top loaders and the card sievers and the bulk boxes and all of these other all these other pieces to build out your collection, manage it. And so I think there's a kind of a fun opportunity for us to potentially help source those for collectors as well. And then, I mean, there's a bunch of other potential, ways that this could go. But probably the one that I'm the most excited about is on the dealer and the store side of the hobby. So we actually have built a whole separate product for dealers and stores using the same computer vision and same database, but basically allowing the dealers and the stores to inventory their product to get it, from the bulk boxes actually online and into, if they want to sell on eBay or if they want to sell on the Collx marketplace, giving them a pathway to being able to do that and being able to grow their business. So I'm really excited about that too.
It's very cool. Ted Mann is the CEO of Collx, Collx. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on. It's fun.
On the next Future Sport podcast, the science behind making pitchers even more hard to hit is evolving.
What we know about the ball as it's flying to the plate is that it's spinning always, except for knuckleballs where it's not supposed to spin. And so the orientation is always changing, but it is constant with respect to the spin axis.
That's John Garrett, analytics engineer at Rapsodo, where spin rates, arm angles, and flight of the pitch are getting more and more refined. That will do it for this episode. As always, the future is now. This is the Future Sport Podcast. I'm Bram Weinstein.